Welcome to MRE Uncut, where we'll give you real and practical insights into the real estate scene in Melbourne. We'll discuss what's happening in the industry, all backed by MRE's history of over 30 years in the game. With that said, let's jump into this week's episode of MRE Uncut. Welcome to another episode of MRE Uncut. My name is Sinead Petropoulos, and today I am joined by Gemma Mitchell from Gemma Mitchell Finance. Hello, Gemma.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So first of all, let's just do an overview of what you do, your mission, your services, and your core clientele.
Yeah, so I am a financial advisor. I'm still on the financial advice register, and I work with a few different companies, but my Gemma Mitchell Finance, I guess, is my kind of brand and my social media handle and that type of stuff. So while I'm a financial advisor, I focus on accessible education and financial literacy and helping people with all the foundations of their finances so that there's a place for them to get help when they're not ready to actually sit in front of an advisor just yet, whether that's an entry cost or a literacy, barrier or whatever it is. But so people, are getting different levels of support. So while I'm a qualified advisor, I love that education piece and that's where I like to work.
What inspired you to start that education piece?
So I was financial advising for a very long time and I just got burnt out. Like financial advice, the industry was changing so much. So this was about 5 years ago. The industry was changing so much. It's so heavily regulated, you have a great hour or so with the client, but then there's hours and hours of research and paperwork. And I was just struggling and I decided to take a career break. And I was like, I'm just going to take a couple of years off. I was really burnt out. Stuff was happening at home. And I was like, okay, take some time out. And my ex-husband, he had always been like, friends would come over for a cup of tea and they'd ask questions. And he was like, people need this. And I'm like, oh no, it's not a regulated service. It's like, I was very institutionalized, and I was like, no, it's not a financial service. You couldn't charge for it. No. And when I was in that career break, I had time to really think of it. And I was like, do you know what? This is something that people need. And so I started what I called consulting. Just talking to people one-on-ones about the stuff, financial stresses in their life. And then I met lots of other people, ex-financial advisors that were doing really similar things. And they were saying, oh, we're calling ourselves money coaches. And I'm like, great, I'm a money coach too. And then it's just kind of spiraled. And now I focus on larger scale stuff. So webinars, podcasts, all that type of stuff. And I still see some one-on-one clients as well. And then, get them ready to either be really confident in their DIY strategies or be in a really great position to sit, and get the best out of financial advice with another advisor.
Do you feel like women come to you a little bit more because you've got that money coach kind of label instead of a financial advisor? So it's more of a general chat than, locked into all the contracts?
Yeah. It's a lot less intimidating for people. So I also find men and women, I'll get a lot of clients that have had what they deem what they felt was a bad experience with a financial advisor. And that might be that it was actually terrible advice or that they just didn't gel with them or it wasn't the right time. But either way, they're feeling really put off by financial advice. So it can be like a bit of a soft intro back into, talking about your finances isn't as intimidating and scary. I still get people booking in, men and women, that go, oh, I'm really nervous because they think, we're just going to be super judgy and be like, don't spend your money on that. What are you doing? But it's just really, really casual. So a lot of the time people will have the appointments with me and then they're feeling a bit more confident in what they can get out of the industry and that they will be able to find somebody that suits their needs and their learning style and just someone that they gel with really. So, building up people's confidence back in the industry is a big part of this job.
Yeah, so what do you think the unique challenges are to those basic mum and dad investors who want to provide themselves and I assume their families with a better financial path? What are the challenges that they face when it comes to financial planning and in particular with property investment?
So right now, I think we're all feeling it. The cost of living, property prices are going through the roof. And we're if we generalize, our age group, if we're thinking these types of people, 35 plus, chances are we haven't had a lot of financial literacy at school. And chances are that we have learnt about money from those closest to us, which might be mum and dad, and they might have had the same career for 40 years, or mum might have been the homemaker, dad had the same career. They might have bought their home, paid it off, and then retired with maybe a little bit of super, stuff like that. It was a pretty safe path for most people, whereas that's feeling really unachievable to a lot of us. So the cost of living's going up. What we've known, it has been really limited about how we can build wealth. Just trying to make ends meet while so much is going on is really, really challenging. And I think everybody is feeling it regardless of your kind of your paycheck at the moment. Like, we're feeling it right through the cost of living and property prices, and just everything is really hard.
I actually always say, when I look back at my education, I think I'll be out of school nearly 20 years, and I'm like, I wish someone just taught me how to do a tax return or how to do better. Like, I don't really care about Pythagoras theorem, and it's really not getting me anywhere in life. Like,
yeah.
and I don't even know, because my children are in primary school age, but I don't think even now there's still like a clear path for a subject that can help you.
I don't think so. Like, yesterday I heard some pretty, somebody was talking about this new program that's gone into 300 schools or something. And it sounded really great, but I think it's probably not at the level that it needs to be. And a lot of it would fall on the actual teacher being financially literate and interested in that kind of stuff themselves. Like, I co-host the Australian Finance Podcast, and we do have people write in, we've had people say that they're teachers and they'll talk to their students about that, but there's no actual kind of framework for it. So I guess it's how, we can only learn from people that have can model it and explain it and know it themselves, right? It's like, learning finance from your parents. Potentially they have one way that they've made their money, and it might not actually work for us. So I think we do need something in schools, but talking about it at home is like one of the major things that you can do, for your children, as well as making sure that money conversations are an everyday kind of conversation.
Yeah. Before you said that, you've got an ex-husband now, you took a career break. For people in that situation who do a similar thing, what's your advice for them, and how can they kind of break these financial barriers by experiencing those sort of events?
Yeah, so major events like that can really set you back. And that affects, both parties in like a separation. And then there's the other unique challenges of and generally it falls on women in Australia, but that is changing. But being like the primary caregivers for either elderly parents or children, there's all of these career breaks that we have where lots of things are happening. You're not progressing your career. You're potentially not keeping up with changes and the networking and things that we need to actually progress our career and our income. Superannuations hasn't been going in previously on like paid parental leave. That's changed. But there's lots of things that kind of hold us back from that. And I think the most important thing for men or women is to be aware of the things that could be hindering you. Be aware of them so that you can be making small changes as soon as possible. Like, we can't change things overnight and just equal it and go, right, everything's equal, everyone's got the same playing field. Like, it's going to take a lot of time. But what you can do is take control of your own situation and look at what levers you have available to you. And maybe you're not in a position to, keep things running as if your career was just going like it should, but maybe you could be taking advantage of these little incentives like a government co-contribution to your super if you put $1,000 in, or, just little things that you can do. The earlier that you do things, the smaller they have to be, whereas the later in life, we have to make these big sacrifices to catch up. But if we're aware of what might be impacting us, we can do little tweaks along the way.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in that situation. I think I got made redundant at the start of COVID at a previous job. And so I think for nearly a good 18 months, potentially 2 years, I was not earning any super at all. And then so recently, like, my husband and I, we've decided to get a life sorted and we're
do some
consolidating
adulting.
all of the, all of the super. And I'm like, he nearly has triple the amount that I do just from that 18-month break of obviously not being the most desirable employee, being pregnant, and then looking after my son. Like, it's,
And there's lots of things that you can do. It starts with having like a conversation between the partners and going, all right, well, how does this impact career? How does this impact this? What levers do we have between the two of us? Because there's things that you can do like super splitting where, one person who's working potentially moves some of their contributions into the other person's. There's the government co-contribution that I talked about before, whereas if you're earning under a certain level and you put up to $1,000 in your super, you might get a boost of $500 from the government or up to. So there's these little things that you can do. The other thing is, like, if you know you're going to be taking time out of the workforce to be at the paid workforce, we should emphasize, to be a carer or start a business, and you won't be paying yourself super for a while or whatever. If you know you're doing that, potentially you could plan for it and be doing some extra until, or once you get back on your feet and, back into a bit of a rhythm, maybe then you look at, well, how do we catch up from that as well? But it's about having a conversation as a team, like a financial team, and going, how does this impact? And on the flip side of that, we often see people assessing like childcare fees, right? And going, it's not worth one person going back to work because they're weighing up that person's income versus that expense. But that expense is a family expense, it shouldn't just be put against that person's wage, because generally when people do that, they're not including, but super's going in then, but career progression's happening, networking, their self-confidence, their self-worth, like all of these things that you can't really just compare those two. Needs to be a conversation and something that you make informed decisions together about. And what works one year might not work the next year. So you need to be flexible and go, let's just assess case by case with the knowledge that we have at the time.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice. And I didn't even consider thinking about it that way as like a whole family.
Yeah, you gotta have, and like exactly, but we tend to look at things in isolation. And this even happens with I find that people will focus on one area of their finance, like their bank account's going down and they're so stressed and like that's stressful, but they haven't looked at their overall wealth, which they might have properties going up, their super might be going up, they might have put money into investments, but we just focus on things in isolation, and we need to really put everything together so that we can make informed decisions with all of the info, and conversations are the easiest way to start looking at that.
Yeah. Do you find that potentially you've come from a family unit that's fizzled out, you're now an individual, do you find that in that scenario that the women approach like property investment differently to how a male would? Because I know that in my family, not intentionally, we kind of fall into like those general roles and responsibilities like you were saying before. Like I am the primary caretaker. My husband is the one who has his job, and I'm the one that deals with like the sick kids. So he's always really like savvy in investing and what he wants to do, and I'm just like, I don't care, I'm surviving.
And the priorities are really that's a really important thing. And sometimes when we have so much that we're dealing with, like if you think of like all that unpaid labor, that mental load, you don't have capacity to be thinking about future you. And that's where you need to be having these conversations together and going, right, what can we be doing together? How does this benefit both of us? What are the strengths and weaknesses? And how do we work as a team? It's so much easier to say than do. But I think what's really important for people in relationships is actually, even singles, because you might have relationships like with a financial advisor, a property, a buyer's agent, your mortgage broker, whoever it is. If you're getting somebody to help you with your finances, I love this saying, and it's you can outsource the execution, but not the understanding. So that goes with couples or professional relationships. You can get somebody to help you with the day-to-day stuff, but you need to understand what's happening, why it's happening, and you need to have full control over that, be informed and, know what's going on. But, like, if you're in a couple, you're both not going to just pay the bills and look at the subscription. Like, it falls on one person, just like the mowing of the lawn generally does. And it's okay for that. You don't have to both do that boring everyday stuff, but you both have to be really aware of why you do things, how it benefits us, where access to stuff is. And think, that works with professional relationships as well, even if it is a financial advisor.
Yeah. How important do you think financial education is around purchasing your first home or your investment property for anybody?
Oh, it is so important from a confidence perspective. And I find that this is obviously stereotyping and generalizing, but women tend to need a lot more information before they're confident in making decisions, but then they make great investment, long-term investors, all of that type of stuff. But they tend to need more information, be less impulsive, less reactive, I would say, in my experience. But that financial education is so key because there's so many elements of it. Like the amount of people that I have seen that I see I see a lot of 40 kind of plus year olds, and they've had mortgages for a long time in their first home, but they don't understand their bank accounts properly. They don't know what an offset account is or a redraw. Just basic things that I guess I take for granted because I work in finance. They're just such simple concepts to me, but a lot of people don't know these everyday things because they've gone out and they've done the bigger things, which looks like financial success, and it's, it is, but it's those day-to-day things that are really holding them back that are so small but so important. And that's the conversations that we can be having, like if you are a parent or even with your friends. Like if we don't talk about money, one, we don't learn from each other, but we also don't know what's good or bad behaviors or red flags. Like if you think about how household finances work and domestic violence and things, if we're not talking about these things, we don't know if it's healthy or normal what's going on in our own household.
Yeah.
So I think that comes into financial literacy too.
And I know that before you said that you do all the webinars. Say if you an employer came to seek your advice, so MREs come to you, you're coming to sit down with our team, which I think is about 85% women, and I'm one of the older bunch. So we'll say like mid-20s. How can companies like MRE support their staff into making, those better financial decisions and providing the resource and education for them?
Okay, so this is a great question. And I think this is from every kind of aspect. I think if we're going to educate or provide resources, they need to be with the most disadvantaged person in mind. Because then everybody does better. So I heard this example, and I'll probably stop that, but it was like you should design things for, like the most disadvantaged. So, for example, a staircase works for the majority of people, but it doesn't work for several people like wheelchair users, whereas a wheelchair ramp is designed for one type of person, but every single person can use it. And that's where financial education should be. So we should be talking to people about, we don't have to be identifying genders. It could be, what happens if you have a career break? And, in property, that might be because you're starting your own firm and different things, where you can't afford to be paying yourself your full wage or your super. But we should be kind of talking about, well, how do you take ownership of your own situation and make sure that you're making choices each year, the flexibility. So foundations are so important, but just giving people information on what all the roadblocks could be so they can be making informed decisions. Imagine I would love it, getting in an ear of a 20-year-old female and saying, this is potentially what your career, your path could look like. Imagine if you started salary sacrificing or investing or something now. Imagine if you got your really good money habits sorted now. Because I see those 45-year-olds and we're trying to undo all this bad kind of behaviors. Just the younger, the better. And I think if you have a business, you have a responsibility to your employers, and it's a huge bonus. We can't give everybody pay rises and bonuses, but what can we do to give them resources that they can better their own situation? That is financial education and empowerment.
Yeah, that's good. What are the 3 pieces of advice you would give to women, just say around our age, on the best way to take control of their finances?
Okay, so I would say 3 pieces. So that saying I said before, you can outsource the execution, not the understanding. So important. Honestly, it would be just like get started. Like we think that we need so much information, but there is always little steps that you can be doing to build up your confidence, whether it's investing, so people often will be like, oh, should I be paying off debt? Should I be investing in shares? Like, why can't you do both? Even if you're investing with $5, you're now engaged with that process. You're learning about it. So when your situation changes and that can become a bigger focus, you've already started that learning curve. So just things like that, I think just getting started there, I love a saying, but done is better than perfect. Just get started. And when you know better, you can do better. But for right now, you need to get started. And the other final piece would be you need to think of future you. Yes, you want to enjoy today. Money is a tool to be enjoyed, but we do actually need to look after future us as well. So I kind of it's so hard to think of who future you is, right? But if I think back to my 20-year-old self, which was 20 years ago, I still like the same things. I still like travel. I still like socializing. So I'm 40 now. 60-year-old Gemma is going to still like all those things, and she's going to need some foundations. And I think if I had have bought a first property at 20 or start investing or whatever, if I had done that 20 years ago, imagine I'd just be like, oh my God, thank you so much, 20-year-old me. Well, that's going to be 60-year-old me is going to be like, thank you so much for doing this. Or at 40, or they'll be going, why didn't you just start? I wish I started earlier. Well, the time's going to pass. So I think getting started and remembering that it's a balance between today and future you.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest misconception with financial planning is that you feel like you need to have a certain amount of money to actually play with. Where before you said, do $5, you're in. No one does that. You're like, oh no, I need to have at least, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars before you can actually do something, which is obviously
and I think that goes the same with property, right? The amount of people that I talk to that want to buy their first property and they are thinking they need a 20% deposit and they think it's so far away. But if you actually just start looking at that, talking to a mortgage broker, looking at your incentives, generally people are pretty surprised that I find that it's a lot sooner than they think. And that's just like investing. It's so much more accessible than a lot of people think. You can get micro investing apps and start doing things like that. And then there's superannuation. If you've worked in Australia, chances are you've got super. So we talk to, especially young women at the moment, social media and things, everyone's it's kind of cool to be an investor. But if you have superannuation, you're already an investor. So if you want to learn about investing, just start interacting with your super fund. Look how it's invested. Take an interest in your statement, get the app on your phone. These are all things that increase our financial literacy and our confidence.
Yeah.
It's not as inaccessible as people think.
Yeah. Well, thank you for our chat today, Gemma. I really appreciate you dialing in all the way from Queensland, and I'm glad you guys are safe from the cyclone.
Thank you. Yes, it was a bit of a fizzed out, but we were lucky.
Yeah, I'm glad. Well, thank you for joining me for another episode of MRE Uncut, everyone.